Hare Krishna. Welcome back, everyone, which right now is no one, and in the future, who knows? Not that many people, though. This is mostly a video journal done live that anyone can see if they want. And even if no one sees it, I'm happy to do it. Today we're doing Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, verses 26 through 29, which will close it out for us in chapter 5. Next live stream next week will be chapter 6. And when we finish chapter 6, we'll be done with the first hexad of the Gita, the first third of the Gita, which is exciting, very nice. 2 announcements. 1, I'm going to share about a cool little devotee discount I got today. 2, for the invocation, I think what I'm going to do, especially because basically no one's watching this, I'm just going to do it how I naturally do it. And then if you want to join along with me, you can however you want to. And I'd recommend just pausing it and hopping back when you're ready. Which may not be obvious, I realize now, because I'm still really perfecting the Om Jnana Timirandasya mantra and getting all the long vowels perfectly. I think I got it now, but we'll see. So today I went to what might be my new favorite vegetarian restaurant. There's only a few in this whole city. It's called Balaji Nepalese restaurant. And today the owner walking around, I think he must be Nepalese, elderly, not quite like elderly, like very old, but, older than me for sure. And it looks like, I think he's got a Korean wife. They run it together. And he saw I was wearing this same kurta and neck beads and just like plain shorts. But this and the neck beads was enough. So he said, bless me, bless everyone. I think I'm talking too fast here. So he said, Hare Krishna, Rama Krishna, Hare Rama. It's always in a strange order like that. And I said, yes, Hare Krishna. And when I checked out at the end, he took off my drink off the tab. So that was my first I guess technically my first devotee discount I got. Living here for 4,000 Korean won, which is, I don't know, $3 or so. Might be buying a lot more of these. I don't fully know what's in it. I'm pretty sure there's no caffeine, but it's like a Gatorade, basically. It's got like minerals in it and stuff. Can be used as an eye opener in electrolytes. That's the word. Yeah, I might use this as my morning coffee substitute to get ready for teaching the kindergarten kids, which takes a lot of energy. Just pounding down like a 20-ounce bottle of these on an empty stomach, that might do it. Let's get to it. Bhagavad Gita as it is, the deluxe edition from, of course, krishnastore.com. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I think I missed it. It's amazing how hard it is to be truly perfect at something. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. Yep, I messed it up there. Chakshur unmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Jnana Timirandas. Messed it up again, man. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. But it didn't count all 8 that time. One more time. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I think that was exactly 3 times. I never want to do anything other than 3. 1 is okay, but definitely not 2, and I don't want to do 4. 1 or 3 is the way we do it here. There is a scriptural basis for that, actually, or Vedic basis. Maybe not in the scriptures, but at least one of the acharyas has mentioned never to wear 2 kunti malas. 1 is okay, 3 is okay, never 2. I find that so interesting. I agree completely based on my understanding and realization of numerology and symbolism and so on. 2 means duality, which is what we're trying to, I don't want to say avoid, but, transcend. And 1 is the unity of all things. I got 1, baby. I'm 1 with Krishna. That's it. Game over. All right. We're not on chapter 6 yet. We're on verse 26. Those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. I'm trying to see if my mic is working. I believe it is. It doesn't really show me if it's bouncing up or not. Normally there's little green lights going on in there. La 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 la. Okay, there it is. I have to go into settings. All right, so in this verse, just like in our last stream, we talked about kama krodha, desire and anger. That appeared again. Those are the first 2 words in this verse. Interestingly, Srila Prabhupada in the colloquial translation does not mention desire. Well, he does. Okay, to be fair, he does, but he says free from anger and all material desires. It's a little bit different than just desire. But at the same time, I think there's definitely a reason he did that. Even if it's just poetic, it's interesting. I mean, it's more thorough this way. It sounds better too. That could be it. It's probably that simple. What I really love about this verse is in the verse here, constantly endeavoring for perfection. In the self-help coaching, whatever industry now, a lot of people, and also in business and corporate business as well, a lot of people are talking about kaizen, Japanese term, which means constant incremental improvement. For some of us like myself, this has just been a way of life practically since day 1. But we do realize that, unfortunately, that's not true for a lot of people. Even in their main, focus of life, could be career, could be not. Maybe, some people, and sometimes for a good reason, of course, like some people want to, cram. It's natural in some instances to work really hard for a week or some amount of time and then relax for a long amount of time. That's totally natural and appropriate for some activities. Although Kaizen, like many other Japanese or Sanskrit or Chinese or Latin or Greek, maybe not English, but these sorts of technical term like memes, these are like meme language that become like a lifestyle. like yoga, for instance, these kind of words start to generalize in your life. So it's not like true Kaizen does not mean like you just work really hard at your job and then you're a total slob everywhere else. That's not Kaizen. And that's not what you see when you go to Japan. You see um, the local people practicing Kaizen all the time in every single area of their lives since birth. It's part of their culture across the board. Physical habits. It's just obvious. They're very ritualized and routine. Um, and in that sense, you could say they're a very religious people, although not in the bhakti kind of sense. It's actually quite rare. I would even venture as to say that the Christians in Japan and the few bhakti cults that are there, even within the bhakti cults, there's probably so many that are just really lacking that kind of, I lost the thread, but like because ananda, as I call it, or like a bliss-centered life, is not always compatible to Kaizen. Like, we have our sadhana, we have our practice that we do every day, but then we do try to improve it every day, but we also have to constantly cultivate this mood of openness, to be ready and open for actual realization, a life-changing, soul-changing, whatever, consciousness-changing realization that will totally shake us up, some next level bliss that will just, turn us into madmen and mad women. That's a special kind of thing, which, and as you know, like the Japanese are famous for a kind of robotic kind of Kaizen. They take Kaizen to a fault. And I'm seeing that every day too with the Koreans as well. It's great I got to talk about it because it is technically dharmic. These are very dharmic cultures. And that's why I moved here. It's great to live in a place where everybody works well. They're always improving and they're paying attention to details and making sure everything works well across the board. So like crime, preventing crime, handling crime, they're always paying attention to details and doing a good job. So there's not much crime. So it's a very safe place to live. And so then in a safe place, it's peaceful. I do get weird looks all the time. I'm not psychologically or spiritually peaceful here, not very much so. But in terms of the material part, I don't have to worry about anything. Don't have to worry about getting robbed or anything, physically, materially, like most things I don't have to worry about. The food quality is not very good. Moving on. So interestingly, the Sanskrit in this verse, if you just look at the word for word translation, I can't actually find where this is. Constantly endeavoring for perfection. I don't see anything like that here. The closest thing is yata chetasam, which means of persons who have full control over the mind. And this is probably a wordplay because the whole line is yatinam yata chetasam. So yati and then yata. Yatinam means of the saintly persons, and yata chetasam is of persons who have full control over the mind. I'm not a Sanskrit scholar. I'm just guessing that the yat that starts both those words, they don't just sound, it's not a coincidence that Krishna is using these words. They probably sound similar for very particular and enlightening reason when you know the Sanskrit. And even if you don't know the Sanskrit, in a very quick way that like H.D. Goswami or Garuda Das Kaviraj would probably be able to do with their, PhDs in the topic. I'm confident I could do that myself if I took a half hour to do it. I mean, I have this in my notes somewhere. Let me know if you want this, but there's like a little guidebook you can read on how to use a Sanskrit dictionary, which you actually need to read. You can't just you can't just look up these words. That's not how it works. You need to know how to look up the words and then look up the words. So it may take just a little bit of time for most of us. But you can eventually get to that place where you get this really, really deep inside look at how Krishna himself is really talking, and just how gorgeous and beyond intelligent all of this is. I mean, it's beauty beyond anything else. As far as the written word goes, there's nothing that comes close. I mean, there's poetry, there's logic, there's everything, there's bliss, there's transcendence. Like everything is all in the Sanskrit itself, fully contained and perfect. Now, I'm not saying we should not use the best translation ever, of course, by Srila Prabhupada, and because it's the best translation ever, you don't need to do this at all. You can simply read the English translation exactly as I do it, exactly as I'm doing it now, by just full on skipping all the Sanskrit, going straight to the English translation. And if you have any problem with that, then going to the word for word translation. And then if you still want to go deeper, then you can go into the Sanskrit. You can do it just like this, or even less than that, and still have immense benefit, because that's the whole point of Prabhupada. So if you don't think that'll work, you're offensive to Prabhupada. That means you don't get it. I don't mean like spiritually offensive. I mean like you're just a really bad student. If you've been here this long and you still don't get that, that's a problem. That means you're not really a devotee. It means you're not really like a genuine student, or maybe you're a disciple, but you're not a student. You're not like really thinking honestly and critically about this. You may be a genuine disciple, and you may be very good at blindly following everyone in different sorts of ways. That's not what Prabhupada wanted us to do. He wanted to create a society of Brahmins, a society of individual thinkers. And I would not say he failed. I would simply say he died, and he didn't have time. He was only here with us for like 10 years. And I mean, he was so busy conquering the world. Do you expect him to also, in those 10 years, to also be able to, set up all the technicalities of the management and the GBC? No, this all happened how it it couldn't have happened any other way. The reason why we don't have a society of free-thinking Brahmins, why ISKCON is largely a society of blind follower sheep, is because that's how the leaders want it. The human, fallible, non-pure devotee, GBC, whatever you want to call them, leaders, even at the local level, many local temple presidents just kind of suck. They're just kind of mediocre. They're not Brahmins. They're not free thinking. They're not good leaders. And all they know how to do is just kind of manage in that like mediocre corporate style of like, oh, you do this, and oh, he put in 2 hours more seva this week, so he's a better devotee. There's all this materialistic thinking involved, and that's why we're at where we're at. It's pretty simple. I'm not saying I have a solution. I'm just saying that, if you want to understand everything that's happening, it's not that hard. If you take your ego out of the equation, take your emotion out of the equation, just look at it as it is, of course things are how they are. Of course. Would you expect anything else? No, I didn't since day one. Never been surprised by any of this. Sometimes I'm sad, sometimes I'm angry, sometimes I'm laughing about it, but never surprised. And there's one part of the purport we're going to read, great analogy Um, oh, it's from a scripture, but Prabhupada doesn't say which scripture. But anyway, I'll read the direct quote from some Vedic literature. Um, by vision, by meditation, and by touch only do the fish, the tortoise, and the birds maintain their offspring. Similarly do I also, O Padmaji, O Padmaja, unquote. And then Prabhupada says, the fish brings up its offspring simply by looking at them. The tortoise brings up its offspring simply by meditation. The eggs of the tortoise are laid on land, and the tortoise meditates on the eggs while in the water. Similarly, a devotee in Krishna consciousness, although far away from the Lord's abode, can elevate himself to that abode simply by thinking of him constantly, by engagement in Krishna consciousness. He does not feel the pangs of material miseries. This state of life is called Brahma Nirvana, or the absence of material miseries due to being constantly immersed in the Supreme. Unquote. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada. Smaranam, I think, is remembering, one of the 9, at least 2, maybe even 3 or 4 of the 9 processes of devotional service are just like thinking. It's just like, oh yeah, Krishna's real. Like, it actually works. And it is that simple, and it gets more and more simple. That's how you know this is the genuine article, a genuine wisdom tradition. Wisdom is simple by definition. It's not complicated. Knowledge is complicated. Wisdom is simple. Simple. Okay, we'll move on to 27 and 28. These 2 verses are combined in this Gita as, well, it's not as one verse because it says on a text 27 and 28, but it's chunked together. Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the 2 eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence, the transcendentalist becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. So here in this verse, Krishna gives us 2 techniques, and the first line is like the introduction to the techniques. Why do we do these 2 techniques? To do what it says in the first line, to shut out all external sense objects. Now, interestingly, once again, there's a deliberate discrepancy between the word-for-word translation, which is Krishna's literal speaking, which is in not just Sanskrit, but a dialect of like Vedic Sanskrit from like that 5,000 year ago time period, which, guess what? Nobody talks like that anymore. Probably not in India, most of India, maybe in Korean and Japanese. I know their grammar is so different than English that it might actually be pretty close to this Vedic Sanskrit, but I'm not a grammar guy. I don't know and I don't care, to be honest. I go straight for the meaning, and I just get everything else is just an obstacle to get to the meaning and the wisdom and whatever I'm reading. Bhagavad Gita, Aristotle, anything else, I don't care. I don't care what language it is. I want to get to the wisdom, and I want to get there fast. Not shortcut fast, but effectively and efficiently. Is there a wiser way to do it? I don't think so. Is there a more spiritual way to do it? Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what you see in the usual Hindu ISKCON class of, 10 minutes of invocation mantras, and then, you read the verse 10 times, and then the class repeats 10 times, and then, that's half the class. And the other half of the class is like, oh, okay, I'll share a few sentences on it. Are there any questions? Rinse and repeat, do the same thing tomorrow. I don't want to bash on that, It just obviously for intellectual people and free-thinking Brahmins and so on, it just gets so dry, intellectually dry, very quickly. The only way to really get into that is if you're really into the religious aspect of the Gita, of really tasting the Bhagavad Gita as Krishna himself in, this kind of form. And I see with me, it's like, I know that that's true, but I also know that words are words, and there are rules to words, and these words, you have to apply those same rules to these words too. Some words are better than others. Some languages are more deep and advanced and abstract than others, of course. But if you want to understand something in your own words, you have to work at it. That's what we're doing here. That's why I do this translation, then that translation, then Prabhupada's purport, then my purport, then my purport to Prabhupada's purport. There's all these different going back and going in and around and from here and from over there. So the more we go away from it, the more we can come back to it and see it how it really is. So in the word for word translation, it literally says, external sense objects, such as doing external sounds, are unnecessary. So the key word is bahyan, which means unnecessary. But in the colloquial translation, Prabhupada says shutting out, which is a verb. That's a very big difference. Shutting out is a verb as opposed to unnecessary, which is an adjective. Once I know I just said I don't like grammar, but in this case, it's very significant. Because if you read just the colloquial translation and you don't look at the word for word translation, then you'll think, oh, it's a verb. So you might take it as a command. Oh, I must shut out all external sense objects, and I must do it by these two techniques. And you will benefit by doing that. But that's not what Krishna is saying. Krishna is saying, if you want to do it, it's unnecessary to engage with the external world. And if you want to practice how to, not be externally associated, you can now do these two techniques. It's a gift. It's not a command, it's a gift. You can take this gift or leave it. Also interesting to note here is that nasa bhyantara, that means within the nostrils. And then Bhruvo, antare means within in this case. Within. All right, so the within is different, but I'm guessing, once again, I'm not the Sanskrit guy, but I'm guessing that nasa is a cognate pair with nostrils. So words like nasal in English, that's probably from the Sanskrit nasa, which means nostril. So I'm going to write that in my notes, perhaps add it to the Sanskrit English Cognate Encyclopedia, which is on my website. At the moment, every single item on that list is from H.D. Goswami. I literally just hear it and I write it down. But I will add this one with a question mark to be verified later. And in the purport, which is kind of, to be honest, as expected, it's not that long of a purport for these two long verses that are combined because, well, it's kind of self-explanatory, one, and two, it's not important to a pure devotee like Prabhupada who's trying to save souls with this translation. The whole point of the Bhagavad Gita as it is from a bona fide source like Srila Prabhupada is that you don't need to worry about any of this stuff. Any of the Ashtanga, Hatha Yoga, anything, any of the like hacks. These are, and I mean that in a good way. There are so many, the yoga culture, history, whatever, the yoga lifestyle, I don't know how to call it. I mean, there's so many different pranayama, right? There's so many different effective, cool things you can do to improve your subtle body. That's how I've been using philosophy my whole life. I've been a jnana yogi my whole life, and it works really well. And that's why I'm committing and I'm still showing up to these live streams. I get to flex that muscle more. And it totally works. That's how I got here. But it's not the end game. The end game is Krishna. And if you, instead of, forgetting about Krishna and I'll get there when I, want whatever, and, I'll just do this, yoga thing for like a while. And, if instead you just go straight to the root of the tree, water the root of the tree, the rest of the tree is growing nicely, and you will benefit the most. You'll get good fruit that way. If you only water the branches or the leaves, you might get one or two decent fruits, and then a lot of fruits won't even bloom or blossom. You get the idea. In the second paragraph, Prabhupada explains that the fifth chapter in general is basically the introduction into these kind of techniques, the Ashtanga yoga system. And in the sixth chapter, that's what we're going to learn in detail. So these two verses here are like a sneak peek into the next chapter. Wait, did I think I didn't read the verse yet. So let me just read the verse here. Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence, the transcendentalist becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. I remember certainly liberated. Was that from... Well, it's very similar to the previous verse where he says, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. That was Krishna. I see what he's doing here, man. He's, oh God. All of these souls, me, you, all of us, we love freedom. I see this every day in my kindergarten class. They're just hankering for just one little bit of little freedom. They're just, give me my own little thing, my own little space, my own little time. Everyone wants their own little freedom. And that's the carrot that Krishna's dangling in front of Arjuna and us throughout the Gita. You want to be free, baby? It's easy. Just enslave yourself to me and then you're free. Enslave is a strong word, but I mean, I hope you see the wordplay there, but it's true. Like the more, I mean, my life is just such a great example of this. Quick note on that. I mean, my coworkers here in this, Hagwon, like cram school, private rich people cram school, English cram school in Korea. The students working so hard, the teachers working so hard. People are miserable here. They're miserable slaves. and in one way, I got to be honest, I'm not helping because here comes me, some blissed out dude, just aloof, doesn't care about nothing what they're saying. I do all my duties. Otherwise it wouldn't work, but trust me, I do all my duties and I don't care. And it drives some of these people nuts. I didn't have this kind of experience in China and Vietnam. Most of the Asian countries I've been, and this was also like 5-10 years ago, so I've grown since then. But when I was first getting started, even though I had Krishna, the Gita, and all this, I was still in my 20s too. So most of my coworkers were better than me. They at detachment, they were working harder than me, and they were more detached than me. So I was like, it was easy to be humble. But man, it's a different story now. I'm not even sure. What I'm working on now is how to rationally justify pretending to be humble in a lot of different cases. But I also don't want to be like cocky, and I don't want to put my detachment like in their face or whatever. But I think I need to be just a little bit more brave and honest with how miserable they are, and come from a place of care and compassion with that. I've tried it a few times, a little success. I mean, I don't know. Once again, I don't want to push it in their face, and I'm still trying to figure out what Korean culture even is. But misery is misery. You don't need to be a psychologist to see it. The body language, like the head Korean teacher at my school, she's pretty, man. She's got pretty features, but her posture's horrible. She's always got a scowl on her face, and even when she does smile, it's a fake smile. It's just horrible vibes. It's hard to even smile at her, to be honest. And she's also kind of ignoring me, so it's like, ugh. But I think she's good at her job. I think she's fine. It's just she's miserable. She's not happy. She's not detached. She's working too hard. She doesn't know why she's working so hard. She has a few moments, oh, that kid's so cute. And, this kindergarten, it's nice. And, I have those moments too, but that's not what I live for. I live for something 10 million times higher than that. And so from my perspective, I'm disappointed. This is not what I expected. I thought, being in a kindergarten, not just I've taught in kindergarten before, but I have never actually had a regular commitment to a small group of students where we see them every day, the same group of students, get relationships going, getting closer with them, and, like, but I still don't care. It's still like I really thought that I could really work for them, that it would be like spiritually fulfilling to be there, this kindergarten. I really don't care. Like I'm not like being irresponsible, but it's like, even when like the best student does something amazing, it's like really cool for like 3 minutes. And then the bell rings, I go to the next class, and it's just done. It's over. It's all, I don't care. I'm more interested in judo, and I like doing my japa. like these other transcendental things are actually transcendental, as they should be. It's so funny. God, I can be really grateful for that. I should be. It's a lot different situation than just 5 years ago, where these kids, they were my life. They occupied a much bigger place in my heart. And I think it showed. I think there was so much good that came from that. But now there's also good that's coming from this. I'm getting a better understanding of, I guess, that I'm actually a devotee. We'll see what happens in the future. So, about the closing of the focusing the eyes, and this is what Prabhupada says in the purport, closing the eyes altogether is not recommended because one can fall asleep. But we also cannot open the eyes completely, as we'll have the hazard of being attracted by sense objects. So that's really interesting. And that goes back to like chapter 2, not too much, don't eat too much, don't eat too little, no hot, no cold. That is yoga. And so now we've got a one level deeper technique, practical yoga technique that Krishna gives to us, that definitely is based on that same principle. And Prabhupada tells us why. That you know, that's not in the verse itself. This is Prabhupada, or Krishna speaking through Prabhupada or whatever, showing exactly what's happening here. And I wrote here, the final sentence is the final purport of the Gita as it is. One who is always engaged in pure bhakti does not risk losing his senses to some other engagement. And so this is better than Ashtanga yoga. You can, quote, transcend or bypass is a better word, I think. You can bypass the whole Ashtanga yoga system by simply being engaged in Krishna consciousness, meaning in devotion to Krishna. Using the 9 processes, it could be just, you could just focus on one. Oh, I'm just going to do prasadam. I'm just going to offer things to, I'm just going to offer bhoga to Krishna. You can do just that, really focus on that, Kaizen style. As long as you keep doing it, you don't have to worry about getting lost in something else. There is nothing else, because in the beginning it's hard, but once you get a taste, once Krishna starts reciprocating and you get the selfish, Atma Ram, selfish benefit of Krishna consciousness, and you really taste how it really is genuinely higher than all those other tastes that could distract you, then you don't get distracted. And one great way to practice this in like a little baby steps is with music. So we all know that like classical music is like more sattvic and higher taste than rock music, rap music, whatever. And so, you can work on that. Just start practicing listening to classical music. It's for some people, it's really hard at first. And it's like, turn it off. But just practice. Eventually you'll actually get a taste for it. And it's a higher taste. And I'm speaking from experience. There are a few moments I've had where I've burst into tears listening to Beethoven and Brahms, especially, but a few others. And those tears, like when it moves you, it's very different than how like a pop song by Britney Spears, for instance, can move you to tears. The way Beethoven can move you to tears is like, it's a healthy addiction. That's the best way to describe it. It's like, it's so good. It's so juicy, but it's also so fleeting that there's this like, can I get more of that? But at the same time, it's like, it's not a bad addiction where it's like, I need my Beethoven. If I don't get my Beethoven, then I can't, I can't do all this other stuff. It's like, no, you're actually liberated because you're in a more peaceful state of mind. You're liberated to really do it a lot more of whatever you might want to do. But at the same time, you have that taste where it's like, ooh, can we go to the next level? I kind of want to do that. Same with philosophy, same with judo. These are all sattva guna. These are all sattva guna things. So, yeah, you can, and that's what these 2 techniques are all about, is just bringing a little more sattva into your life. And once again, Prabhupada says, that's great, fine, whatever, if you do it. I'm paraphrasing. But if you just do bhakti, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to do all these fancy techniques. You don't have to do none of this stuff. If, like me, you can and you want to and you benefit from it and it brings you closer to Krishna, then great, do it. We don't care. But it ain't bhakti. I'm reading now from Prabhupada here. This yoga process helps one become free from all kinds of fear and anger, and thus feel the presence of the supersoul in the transcendental situation. In other words, Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of executing yoga principles. Oh, so beautiful. And now I'm starting to see the next hexad where, in chapter 6, maybe 7 and 8, whatever. We're getting deeper into all the Ashtanga yoga things. And but why? Is it because, chapter 12, it's going to be even more detailed and advanced? No, this is a wisdom text. It gets simpler, not more complicated. So why is Krishna like slowly unloading all these techniques? It's so the great prestige, the great switch, the great magic trick that in the end, he switches it around and said, oh, by the way, you don't got to do none of that, buddy. Just come to me. I'll take care of all that for you. How about that? It's like, oh, wow. All right. Taking too much time, so we're going on to 29 regardless. Verse 29. The sages, knowing me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attain peace from the pangs of material miseries. That is the final verse of chapter 5. And it continued, it's the perfect continuation of what Prabhupada just said in the last sentence of the purport to the previous verse, which is that bhakti is a better way of controlling the senses than by the Ashtanga yoga. And why does he say the Ashtanga yoga instead of the Ashtanga yoga system? Because of what it actually means. Ashtanga yoga means the 8 limbs of yoga. So the 8 limbs of yoga. It's actually good English when you understand what it actually means. This is like the ATM machine thing. Like ATM means automated teller machine. It already has machine in it. So when you say the ATM machine, you're an idiot. You're not understanding it correctly. Like, I'm not going to, there's a time and place and like a way to, have good rhetoric about that, but it means what it means. You don't need to say machine. You just say ATM. That's enough. And you don't need to say, I think he does say, maybe he says Ashtanga system or something like that in other places, but in that sense, it was perfect. You can say it just like that, the Ashtanga yoga. It also sounds more honorific that way too, and poetic, and it's really nice that way. So, verse 29, Krishna is saying that no matter what kind of sacrifice or austerity you do, the ultimate end and ultimate purpose of all that is Krishna. And here's talking about how Krishna, he awards peace above all else. And the word here is santim, which Prabhupada translates as relief from material pains. So peace and relief, this is synonymous with liberation that Krishna has been talking about in previous verses here. So actually how to say that Sanskrit word is shantim. Shantim. And the purport here in this verse, the purport here for this verse is actually, this may be actually a theme. It may be, if you go find the final purport in each chapter, if you were to compare just the last purport with every other last purport, you may see the same trend where it's actually Prabhupada is actually reviewing and summarizing the entire Gita up to this point, not just the chapter, but he's actually reviewing everything up to this point. And so, and it's in the chronological order as well. So the final part of the purport is where Prabhupada gets into the most recent things in chapter 5, such as the Eightfold Yoga System. And Prabhupada says even more strongly here that the Ashtanga Yoga is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness. Here he uses the word automatically, which is stronger. in a good way, because the ultimate purpose is served. And that's the main point of this final verse. We are at 50 minutes. That's too long for everyone. Once again, I ranted too much. I'm sorry about that. So if you're having trouble following me or following chapter 5 or following the purports Prabhupada's been writing in chapter 5, read this purport. Chapter 5, verse 29. This is the most important purport in all of chapter 5, and maybe even the past few chapters as well, if you're not quite caught up with everything. I'm not going to read it, although I may read just one little part of it or not. So there is a gradual, Prabhupada says, there is a gradual process of elevation in the practice of Ashtanga. He lists all 8 in Sanskrit in the Ashtanga Yoga. Quote, but these only preface perfection by devotional service, which alone can award peace to the human being. It is the highest perfection of life, unquote. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of karma yoga, or action in Krishna consciousness. Next time we will look at chapter 6, which is called Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga. Thank you all. Have a good day or morning or whatever time you're in, wherever place you live. Hari Bol, Hari Krishna, Hari Rama, Jai Srila Prabhupada.